let's write an application in C# which works with inheritance. So I'm starting off with a C# console application, File, New, Project. Make sure that I'm using C# and a console application. I renamed it. In this case, I called it CS_abstract classes. We'll take a look at abstract classes too. And that's our starting point. Now, once I'm in here, I have my namespace, which is actually going to be the name of my project folder. Inside of that, I have one class. The default name is program. If I highlight that and right-click and rename, how about if I call it driver class, or the main class? Yeah, that's better. Call it the main class. Okay, and apply that. It used to be called refactor, so that's the way I can rename that and make sure that the name changes throughout the program. Okay, so now I've got my main class, static void main. Let me expand this. And inside of my main class, I've got one method, my main method, and I did a console write line program, and I'll put in there console read line method. And then I'll go ahead and do debug, start debugging just to test this out and make sure that everything's working okay. So that works. I'm going to add a class to my namespace. So I'm going to collapse this main class down. So now you can see inside of my namespace I just have this one class, and I'm going to add my second class and tab, and it gives me a default name. I'm going to call this one parent. Okay, and inside of my parent class, a class can have properties and methods. Some of the things that I will add with the parent class. I'm going to add a property, and yes, integer property. I'm going to call it age, and I'll leave it like that. And let's add a constructor. So adding a constructor just to show a constructor. I'm going to add a method called talk, and so now that we have a class, I'm going to go back to my main class and actually use this. Don't need this. And so I'm going to say from my parent class, I'll call this, make an object called P1, and new, and call the parent constructor. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to type in P1, and I have access to a method called talk. So I'll go ahead and call that method. And I also have access to a property called, age. And I can set that if I want. Okay. Okay. So now I should be able to run that and start debugging, and when I do, it first goes into that the class that I call parent. In the constructor, I had it say parent constructor just to show you that it does enter the parent constructor. And then we have our method called talk in parent, which just outputs a string of text. And then we've got a property called age, which we set to 35 in this case. So everything looks like it's working okay. Let's do this. I'm going to add another class. So collapse this one down and collapse my parent class down. And let's put another class in there. In this class is going to be, let's call this one child. And in this child class, let's make a method called work. But say there's already a method that's in the parent class, and in fact the parent class already has methods and properties which I want to use. So since the child can inherit these from the parent, let me go ahead and put this, let me go ahead and put the work class in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add the keyword virtual to this. Now, this is in my parent class, and in my child class, I'm going to inherit parent. When I inherit it, it means that I have access to all of these methods and properties which are public. If they were private, wouldn't have access to them. But since they're public, I'm going to have access to those. So back to my child class. I'm going to change this one to how about so I have the parent class, and then I've got a child class which inherits everything the parent can do that's public. And in this one I have an additional method called study. In the child class I have an additional method called study. Now let's go back to our main class, and in this one I created parent object, I'm going to change this. And let's make this, I'm going to create out of the child class, I'm going to create C1. And child, call the constructor. Now that I've done that, I'm going to do C1 dot, and here you'll notice that I have access. Now in the child class, there was only this one method. That's the only thing that was in the child class. But since it inherits from parent, it means I have access to all these. So I can see that when I go into my child class and create an object out of it. Now when I type the dot operator, I see that I have access to the age property from parent. I've got access to the study method, talk method, work method. So the study method was the one that was in child. So we know that's going to work okay. So let's go ahead and invoke the work method. Okay. Oops. So that's the only thing I want to do. I want to create an object out of child and invoke the work method from the parent class. Debug, start debugging. And from the parent constructor, it says working. So that works okay. But let's do something a little different. You notice I put that keyword virtual in that method, in that work method. So let's go down to the child and let's put in override okay. So I'm using the override, and in here what I'm going to do is I'm going to say okay. So I've got a work method in parent which says working, but I made it virtual. So now in the child, what I can do is that I can override the work method and put my own code in there, whatever I want to do in that. So now let's go ahead and run this again. And now, instead of having it say working, I can have the method from child, which overrode that method from parent, and I can display that information. Okay. I'm going to pause there.